racism. Text messages sent by his son in late 2018, early 2019 have surfaced, reportedly showing Hunter using the N-word multiple times with his lawyer.
Yeah, the Daily Mail also says Hunter texted the attorney lewd jokes referring to his body and then, quote, said this, quote, "I only love you because you're black," end quote. Hunter Biden's lawyer, George Messiers, is actually white. Apparently not amused, reportedly replying, quote, "It's so annoying when you interject with frivolity."
For reaction to these newly published messages and the corporate media ignoring them as well, we want to welcome in our panelist, Joseph Pinion, host of Saturday Agenda right here on Newsmax. Also joining us, Ash Wright, a Republican strategist. And finally, Isabel Brown, a contributor for Turning Point USA and author of this book, Frontlines, Finding My Voice on an American College Campus. Great to see our panelists today. Joe Pinion, we'll just start with you here. Your top thoughts on the release of these text messages.
Look, a wise man once said the white liberal is the worst enemy of America and the worst enemy of the black man. That wise man having been Malcolm X. There was a time when black people in this country, with the founding ethos of the Black Congressional Caucus, knew that black people had no permanent friends and only permanent interests. And now they realize that we've made a permanent friend of the Democratic Party, we've made a permanent enemy of the Republican Party, and our permanent interests have been pushed to the side. That is what we're dealing with right now. And so whether it is a Bernie Sanders voting liberal who calls the police on a man who's watching birds in Central Park, or the son of the President of the United States using the N-word with impunity, or the President of these United States himself saying if you do not vote for him, you are not black. Time and time again, liberals show us exactly who they are. And if we don't wake up as a nation and also as a community of black people to recognize that we have to do for ourselves and usher ourselves through the society that we're trying to build, this is going to get much, much worse.
It doesn't get covered. Obviously, the story hasn't got covered a lot in mainstream media. Isabel Brown, what do you think that's a test to? If you reverse the roles, if Hunter were the son of Donald Trump, do you think the reaction, do you think the news coverage would be different?
It certainly would. And that's the million-dollar question right there. And the one that's rattling among Twitter users, especially, that I've seen thousands and thousands of tweets about. Make no mistake about it. If this was said in a text message or publicly by any of the Trump children, this would be dominating every news headline of every newspaper. It would be receiving constant coverage on MSNBC, on CNN, on every major cable news network. And unfortunately, we're just hearing very little about this story from the corporate liberal media. But this is not the first time that we've heard racially charged comments from the Biden family whatsoever. Joe, you just reminded us that the president himself has said many racially charged comments, especially towards black Americans, including referring to his former running mate, President Barack Obama, when he was a candidate, as the first mainstream African-American candidate in U.S. history with a clean and put together appearance. This is not a new phenomenon. It is not a new line of comments that we're seeing from the Biden family, and it deserves a lot more coverage than we're getting.
Well, critics, as I'm sure everyone on this panel would know, would argue that Hunter Biden is not an elected official. He's not the president of the United States. But Ash Wright, we've heard from Joe Biden calling his son Hunter the smartest guy he knows. Should the president be addressing the situation? Should he have to answer some questions about the remarks that his son had published?
Yeah, absolutely. He definitely should. I mean, look, with great power comes great responsibility. And I think, at this point, Joe Biden needs to step up and accept the responsibility for his family. For years, we have watched American political families take responsibility for what other members of the family are saying. And I think Joe Biden should be doing that on behalf of the country. I mean, look, it's not just the fact that he's the president either. It's that he's a parent and that every American is looking at him to say this is a time in our nation where you can actually step up and take responsibility and ask your family to take responsibility. It's a shame that he won't. And it's not a surprise at all. Like Isabel said, I mean, we've seen this for years and for decades from their family. So no surprise at all, but very disappointing. And I think what's also disappointing is that there's not a single Democrat or Al Sharpton or anyone else from that side that's stepping up and saying, look, Joe, you need to take this. You have to take control of this situation, get control of Hunter Biden, or else he's going to be an Achilles heel for us in the next election. And, look, ultimately they won't, but it's just very disappointing for our nation.
Let me give 30 seconds just to Joe Pinion, because I want to point out this fact. There have been so many professionals in the media industry that were canceled because either they use the N-word because they did something at a plantation, because they use the term antebellum. Chris Harrison's gone from The Bachelor because he supported a 19-year-old who went to something of a antebellum themed party, whatever it was. But the bottom line here is you've seen Hunter Biden there with Jimmy Kimmel recently. He's slated to teach at a college campus about cancel culture in New Orleans at one of the universities there. Will he be canceled like everyone else that we've seen in the media, Joe?
Let's be very clear. They're canceling the people because they do not like the ideas that those people represent. They're not canceling them because of the words that actually came out of their mouth or the people that they've actually supported. This cancel culture movement has nothing to do with us being offended by racism or us being offended by prejudice. We have many instances where liberals have shown us time and time again they don't care about anything as long as it can help them keep control over that institutional power base, and that power base inevitably becomes the power of the black and brown vote.
All right. That is Joe Pinion. He's the host of Saturday Agenda right here on Newsmax. You can watch him every weekend. Our other panelists, Ash Wright and Isabel Brown, thank you all. We appreciate it, guys. Take care. Joining us, President Biden, departing from Europe just moments ago. He's traveling to the UK to attend a high-stakes meeting of the G7.
So this will be Biden's first foreign trip since he has taken office. For the latest now, we'll bring in Newsmax White House correspondent Emerald Robinson, joining us live from the White House with the very latest. Emerald.
Hi, Sean. Hi, Emma. Good to see you. Good morning. Yes, President Biden is on his way to the G7 in the UK. And look, the overarching theme, according to the White House, for the president during this G7 summit is to strengthen and build alliances with European countries with the mission of countering Russia. So one senior administration official saying that essentially this is Biden hoping to build stronger alliances to prepare for another quote unquote Cold War as tensions have ramped up with Russia. After this G7 summit, where he'll also meet with the Queen, which was, a highly coveted meeting for any U.S. president. He will then go to NATO to further talk about the situation between Russia and the Ukraine, which will be a big selling point. Also a big part of what he will be doing at the G7 and NATO will again be forwarding his climate change agenda, which is the through line in almost everything that this administration does. As a part of his appearance at the G7 as well, he'll be proposing a global minimum tax as a part of this climate change agenda. But of course, all eyes are on the last leg of his trip, where he sits down with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Geneva, Switzerland. There's already been some inflammatory rhetoric out of Russia targeting President Biden. So everyone is watching to see how he handles Biden in this in-person meeting. Clearly, Biden has shared a lot of stories from the past suggesting that he has had very strong words for Biden for Vladimir Putin in person. But then many foreign policy experts here are noting that while he has been president, he has given President Putin a few gifts, like relieving sanctions that further enables the completion of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which will clearly also be a topic of discussion during that meeting, Sean.
All right, yeah, we'll continue to follow that. A lot to come out of this trip. I believe he's going to be out for a week. We'll continue to follow that. Meanwhile, Emerald, if I understand this correctly, you sat down with Senator Rand Paul. He had a lot to say about Dr. Fauci. Is that right?
A lot. Clearly, Senator Paul has been on the forefront of the inconsistencies that Dr. Fauci has exhibited over the last year, as well as the lab leak theory, and just questioning the science that's being put out there altogether. First off, I asked Dr. Paul, yes, Senator Paul, why Fauci hasn't been fired.
Why hasn't he been fired? But it's become so partisan. It used to be once upon a time, Republicans and Democrats up here would say, well, we want people to be honest with us. We want them to be forthcoming. And if they don't give good advice, maybe they should go. But now uniformly, Democrats want to defend him. It's become a partisan issue, so much so that I want to investigate still further what's going on with gain of function research and his idea that it wasn't I want that to be investigated by a committee, but I can't get a Democrat counterpart to let me have this investigated in the committees.
Senator Paul's been very focused on this gain-of-function research and changing policies regarding that. Clearly, Dr. Fauci has contradicted his earlier statements on gain-of-function now, but also Senator Paul's concerned about the origins of the virus, that he suggests Dr. Fauci participated in a quote-unquote cover-up. And as far as ongoing investigations go and past investigations, Senator Paul suggested this is just another case of the investigators investigating themselves.
We don't need a country where we live where there's a ministry of truth, and the truth is defined by people like Dr. Fauci. The other big thing about the cover-up, and I think there probably was a cover-up with Wuhan, is that the people that were appointed to investigate it were the people who gave them money. So who would be culpable? Who would be the most guilty, at least guilty in the sense of, attaching some blame for this virus? It'd be the people in the U.S. who funded it. That would be Dr. Fauci and this Dr. Daszak with EcoHealth. So those are the people two most culpable, because then the chain of money that's going to Wuhan, who did they appoint? This Peter Daszak ended up being appointed to investigate himself.
Now, Sean, Senator Paul didn't say specifically whether he thought this Biden investigation or probe would produce any results, but he did seem optimistic and encouraged that at least for now, corporate media is also finally covering a story that for the last year they suggested was a conspiracy theory, Sean.
Yeah, he held his ground on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we've seen the media really flip how they cover the origin story. Exclusive interview there in Washington, the president heading abroad to the UK, and the vice president returning home as well to Washington. She was just in Mexico. And Emerald, Kamala Harris held a press conference just yesterday. There was a bizarre moment where someone asked a question who wasn't supposed to be there. What can you tell us about that?
Well, it caught the attention of the press around the world, and that this quote unquote reporter was quite fawning in asking Vice President Harris her question. Take a listen.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. For me, it's an honor because I actually got to vote for the first time as a nationalized citizen, and I voted for you. So my question is,
that reporter suggesting that she was with the network Univision, but we reached out to Univision. They said this person does not work for them. They doubled down on that. It's not clear how she got access to that press availability. And what is interesting to note, Emma, about this situation is that the U.S. print pooler, the one that traveled with the vice president's press corps on her plane, was held back out of one particular press availability, saying that she couldn't enter because there was too many people. Now, we've reached out to the WHCA, who deals with a lot of these matters, and also the White House. They haven't clarified as of yet how this happened.
Yeah, very interesting. And as you point out, quite a security concern as well. Should be interesting to get a follow on that. Yeah. All right, live for us at the White House, Emerald Robinson. We appreciate the reports. Thanks, Emerald. And as we talk about the border, it is worth remembering the numbers that we're seeing are unlike any we've seen in the recent past, at least. Just this week, Axios citing preliminary data from Customs and Border Protection revealing that nearly 900,000 migrants were stopped by Border Patrol from October 1st to May 31st, nearly 1 million people since October 2020. That totals more crossings than any time since 2006, and there are still four more months left in this fiscal year.
Let's continue to dive in. Just last month, there were more than 170,000 apprehensions. Again, just last month, 170,000 apprehensions. Another monthly record after back-to-back spikes in April and May. And these numbers, keep in mind, do not include the so-called gotaways that Border Patrol cannot account for. The numbers continue to go up, and Emma's noted 4 more months and counting. Crisis at the border. The numbers don't lie.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw the vice president head to Guatemala and Mexico, of course, notably missing from her trip a stop at the U.S. border. Coming up, right?
70%, then I feel comfortable saying to the people of this state, we can relax virtually all restrictions.
Joining us to discuss, Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis, a Republican from New York. Congresswoman, great to see you here. As noted by the governor there in his press conference, we are 1.4% away, the vaccination rate, to get back to normal. Where do you think this number is coming from? Why do you think he's so adamant on reaching 70%? Is it necessary?
Well, I think everything with this governor is arbitrary. And the fact that we are just 1.4% away, set to his arbitrary figure, just shows you that he's just grasping, trying to take control of the state. And I think that if you look at what's happening across the country, those states that have administered the most doses are states like New York and California, and yet they still have the most stringent restrictions put in place. So, states like Florida and Texas and so many others along the coast, they have actually been relatively open, much more open than New York, and yet they haven't reached that 70% figure. So this is, again, just an attempt by the governor to maintain control and put forward arbitrary restrictions.
Well, you mentioned the restrictions here, and he said in New York you can get rid of the face masks when you're outdoors, but indoors, and specifically inside the classroom, kids must still be wearing masks if their schools require it here. What do you make of that decision? What science have you seen that might point to that ruling?
There has been no science that points to that ruling, which again is another way that we are seeing the governor being very controlling of the situation. Mayor de Blasio as well. Children, we already know.
In the U.S., in America as well. What do you make of Congresswoman Omar's comments equating, or at least comparing, America to Hamas and the Taliban?
Well, I was actually in that committee meeting, and it was shocking to hear her compare the United States of America to terrorist organizations, Hamas and the Taliban. I mean, this is questioning America's humanity. Someone who came to this country as a refugee, thanks to America's generosity, thanks to our humanity. So, somebody who is going to question her ability to come to this country as a refugee and then ascend to the United States House of Representatives to question America's humanity, to question how truly special this nation is wrong. She should not be a member of the House of Representatives if she feels this way about the country who gave her refuge.
I can't help but notice, Congresswoman, the American flag you have that is behind you right now. I know we've seen in recent months flags other than the American flag flying at U.S. embassies abroad, including in the month of June, the Rainbow Pride flag. We had also seen towards the end of May, the BLM, Black Lives Matter organization's flag flying at the embassy. Talk to me about that effort and what sort of traction you've gained.
But during that same foreign affairs hearing, I asked Secretary Blinken straight out, is this going to be a change in U.S. policy where we're now going to be flying flags of political organizations at our embassies on foreign lands? I believe strongly, as I believe most Americans do, that it should be just the United States flag that is flying at our embassies, okay? The only other exception should be another government flag or military flag. But in no way should there be flags of political organizations, particularly Black Lives Matter, an organization that is a Marxist organization that supports defunding the police, that accuses our U.S. military of being racist, an organization that doesn't want elected officials that disagree with, like me, in the House of Representatives. They want to expel us. They want to take away the First Amendment from President Trump and prohibit him from ever returning to the Oval Office. Their flag should not be flying at our embassies, nor should the flag of any political organization. And so my bill would prohibit that. And unfortunately, the secretary, when I asked him that question, doubled down on it and said it's the essence of our democracy. I mean, flying a Marxist organization's flag at our embassies is not the essence of democracy. It's quite contrary to everything that America stands for.
All right. Well, you'll have to keep us updated on how the bill might progress. Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis joining us live. Thank you, Congresswoman. We appreciate it.
Those, because you can really we've got to get away from this one. You can only think this way and that's it. Nothing else is acceptable. And that was a great way to showcase that, because you just went to the street. You just went outside in Times Square, where, by the way, you'll find people from all different backgrounds and just get their opinions. Doesn't mean they're right, doesn't mean they're wrong, but just you're hearing other people have the conversation, and it's allowed, which was refreshing. And your interview with the Surgeon
Dr.
General,
Adams.
Dr. Adams yesterday, he kind of put a good point that I didn't even think about. And he says, look, Dr. Fauci caters to the woman that was like my hero, right? She'll listen to him.
Sure.
And then Dr. Adams says, maybe more people listen to me on this side. So they have different messengers. It is interesting to see, do you want to knock the trust barrier down that they've already established with this audience? So he made an argument about why keep Dr. Fauci around. Again, that was the Surgeon General. Obviously, the lady in Times Square doesn't think so.
Right, absolutely. And again, this followed the release of the emails where we learned more about where he stood on masking, whether or not it would be effective or not. Right. Also immunity, those who had naturally recovered from COVID-19, whether or not, they would be protected from further infection, and the origins of the virus as well. So it was very telling, and I appreciated the gentleman who said, I'm going to come out with an opinion, but hold on, let me actually check those emails so I can be better informed when making my decision here. And I think as we've seen time go on, it's so important that second doctor's opinion, right? Yeah. You would make that a priority in any major medical move. We relied all of the decisions for the most part on Dr. Fauci.
Did you catch the glimpse of the glare of Krispy Kreme on one of the glass, by the way?
I did see that. Yeah. I know that's your favorite. What, the chocolate glaze?
Chocolate glaze, yeah.
We got to send Sean out to Times Square next.
Yeah, right after this show.
We'll see what he finds there. Coming up, though, right here on National
Clinical Drug Trial at the Cleveland Clinic. Joins us now. Doctor, thanks so much for coming on. Can you tell me about this study? And bear in mind, we're all trying to play catch up here on the medical results of this. But tell me about the study, what you found, how promising this new approval is.
I agree that data provided was not complete and controversial. I'm ambivalent feeling about it. Halfway through the study, we increased maximum dose for a large group of participants who had genetic predisposition for Alzheimer's disease. The trial was terminated early, so there was a good number of participants who didn't reach to the maximum dose or didn't receive it long enough. I agree with critics that data we received was incomplete. I think the difference in opinion comes from how we interpret this data in totality. I wish we had more robust data for the first approved disease-modifying treatment. What we got from the current data is not only amyloid plaques were removed in both trials, but in one trial, there was significant slowing of cognitive decline. Also, the participant from another trial from a safety study who got the higher dose and continued over the last 5 years, they continue to show a slower decline in cognition. But keep in mind, this medication is approved in an accelerated condition. Basically, it's based on one condition that the company has to repeat another trial to prove what the medication is intended to do so.
Okay. Well, doctor, let me ask you this, because the critics are pointing out that the side effects don't outweigh the results of this. What are the side effects? What do people need to know before talking to their doctors about this?
Correct. So one of the most common side effects reported for this medication, we call it amyloid-related imaging abnormalities. So basically, reported in 40% of the patient.
You can say that when we eat by our hand, then our food is digest quickly because have natural thing in hand.
What is up? Good morning. It's Dan and Chris, and welcome back to the Learning English on the Street. And today I got a chance, like the invitation from Chris, to try the Indian food. I never tried it before, but I'm so curious. Chris, so can you tell us more about this restaurant and anything about Indian food here?
Yeah, well, first of all, this restaurant, I found it over Tet because everything was closed, but this restaurant's open because there are foreigners that are working here. So I came here, I tried it, I loved it. I met the owners, super great people, and I love Indian food. People in America really love Indian food.
Yeah, but I heard about the way that people will try the food by using hand, right?
Yeah, they
I'm
eat
not
with their
familiar
hands.
with that. So.
I'll show you. It's fun.
Bleeding was mostly in the form of mini bleeding. As part of this treatment, blood vessels become leaky, so the fluid and blood cells will leak out to the surrounding area. Most of the time, they resolve by itself over the next few weeks. Serious symptoms, I think, reported only less than 1% of the patients. I'm a little concerned about safety, as the labeling of medication doesn't reflect the safety measures we had during the trial. My advice is always to make decisions wisely. This not will be a medication for somebody who's a high risk of bleeding or cannot get MRI. It will be difficult to achieve this treatment in a less experienced setting. I would like to emphasize here, this is not a cure for Alzheimer's disease and highly unlikely to provide benefit for people in a more advanced stage of the disease.
Okay.
So this is edema and the bleeding in the brain. That's the most common side effect, but the bleeding was form of a mini bleeding.
So it's not a cure, but it will treat it. It will slow it down. Is that correct?
Oh, that's the promise of the medication, that we remove the amyloid plaques in the brain, and that's consequently slow down the progression of disease.
Okay. Any idea, for those that are watching, I think they would want to know, when would this be readily available?
Well, manufacturer, basically, the market of the medication can probably release it within a few weeks to the market. But keep in mind, we need other regulators also involved in that. So that include insurer,